Okay, so I think we're all right. We're good to go. So again, welcome everyone. So good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're joining us. I am Kawal Kapoor. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm the research manager at the Advanced Services Group. It is great to have you with us today. What I would like to do is tell you a little bit about what we do. So we are the Advanced Services Group, and we entirely focused on servitization. So completely focused on helping firms move from, oh, I hear music. Intro music. Keith, was that you?
Sorry.
Sorry, I shouldn't have been calling you out now. Back in the zone, right? So I was telling you about ASG. So yes, we help businesses move from product-based models towards services and outcomes. And we are a research-led organization, but our work sits right at that intersection of academic insight and practical real-world application. So over the years, we have worked with more than 450 manufacturing organizations. Some of them you're seeing on your screen. So global multinationals to innovative SMEs, we've worked with them all. And while these businesses vary in their size and structure and sector, what they all share is the complexity of transforming how they create and deliver value in a service-led economy. And that's where we are positioned. Our mission is very simple but bold to accelerate the adoption of servitization across industry. So we stay close to the latest global research, but we also spend a lot of time with practitioners. So people working inside businesses, people leading change and building those service-led strategies under real commercial pressures. So it's that combination, the research and practice together, that is what makes our perspective a bit different, unique. It allows us to support manufacturers not just in asking better questions, but in developing more future ready, more sustainable answers. And that is what brings us to today. So this webinar is to introduce you to a new white paper that we, Advanced Services Group, have co-produced with Domino. And the white paper, just to give you a little bit of introductory brief, is it's a structured Delphi study. I'll tell you more about it as we go along. And this was conducted with senior leaders from FMCG manufacturers and platform providers. And we looked at the Western markets, we looked at India, we looked at China because we wanted to look at a global spread of what was happening where. And the goal was to understand what what is really changing in factory operations, not just from a technology standpoint or a regulatory standpoint, but from the perspective of the customer. What is it? What are manufacturers looking for from their suppliers? Domino being the equipment supplier, it was very much focused on what do their customers want from an equipment supplier. What's getting in their way? What will success look like in the decade ahead? And what we heard was very clear. It was very consistent. It was more of, manufacturers no longer are just looking for machines or technology upgrades. They're looking for more support, more accountability for partnerships that are aligned with their bigger business goals. And everywhere we looked, we saw growing focus on measurable outcomes, focus on long-term value and integrated supplier relationships. And the paper captures all of those insights. It gives you a more cross-regional view, more grounded view of how expectations are changing and what it is really going to take to stay relevant as the factory of the future takes shape. And I am really looking forward to exploring those themes with our panel today. So this is a panel style session. We'll tell you about it in a second. And also looking forward to hearing your thoughts on what this means for, future equipment and services. If you have ideas to share, please do. So before we jump into the discussion, just a quick housekeeping note. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a Q&A function. Please do use that. Feel free to submit questions at any point during the session that you may have. We will be collecting them as we go along, and we've set some time aside at the end to respond to as many as we can. And now I am delighted to hand over to someone who really doesn't need much introduction. We are thrilled to have Sarah Nicastro with us today. Many of you may know her as the host of the Future of Field Service. I have to get this right. And Sarah's become one of the most trusted voices in this space, helping to shape conversations around service transformation, customer outcomes, business model innovation. So and we've managed to have her to agree to host the session for us today. So Sarah, thank you very much for being with us today. And over to you.
Thank you, Kawal. Yes, happy to be here. I love having these conversations. I have an opportunity to do so very often, and I find each and every one of them quite interesting. So thrilled to be here, and would like to also introduce the other folks that are taking part in the conversation today. So we are joined by Kate Rattigan, who is the Senior Product Manager for Advanced Services at Domino Printing Sciences. Hi, Kate. And Keith Thornhill, who is the head of food and beverage for UK and Ireland at Siemens. So thank you, Keith, for joining. The great thing about this panel that we have today is we're going to be hearing from a number of different perspectives, which is always very helpful as we consider different facets of what this journey looks like and the different things that it entails. So Kate, I would like to start with you. If you look, I had a look at the report, and of course, everyone that is attending the webinar today will get a copy of the white paper when it is released. But in the report, it states that there are many dynamics that are challenging long-held assumptions. I really like that phrasing, and I think it's very accurate. Can you share a bit what motivated Domino to commission this study and to have a deeper look at what your customers were thinking about and wanting from you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, for those that don't know us, Domino has a well-established engineering background, and it's led to the development of a full range of printing technologies, which really help our customers in the FMCG environment and many other industries. But we see that the landscape is changing, and there's a shift in many of the certainly the dynamics that we've seen in the past. And so I guess you could say that Domino has started to challenge our own long-held beliefs that product quality and manufacturing excellence are sufficient to take us into the next decade. And we're starting to see some shifts like changing customer expectations in terms of what they want from suppliers. So it could be performance metrics that are being baked into contracts, or it could be, the relevance of different performance criteria in selecting a supplier in the first place. So rather than looking for the lowest cost option, we're hearing that partnerships and service and support are far more important to our manufacturing customers. We see other changing requirements in the landscapes in which they operate in, which are often not things that can be predicted. So really there's an importance of working alongside a supplier that can work in an adaptable way and can meet future challenges. And I guess one of those examples is the sort of rise in things like 2D and data matrix codes that becoming so prevalent for manufacturers to either improve traceability or interactivity with their customers, and these sorts of things are factors, are requirements of their suppliers that perhaps weren't foreseen some years back. We're then seeing things around sustainability and how that's driving changes in packaging materials and other sort of compliance related changes. And you know, actually in the many conversations that I've had with our customers, I hear, you know, I sort of start to look for what might be an opportunity for the future. And I hear things about, you know, we just can't predict what our needs are going to be, let alone tell Domino what we're going to want from you in the future. So the importance is really staying close and staying adaptable. And so I see this research as being part of our efforts to keep close to industry trends, understand customer drivers, and to use that to then translate into how we design our products and services to give the biggest impact for, you know, ultimately quite a diverse kind of set of customers, you know, in this FMCG environment. So we really need lots of different tools to help us to get there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And thank you, Kate. I really appreciate the point you made about really Domino challenging its own assumptions. And I think that's a really important takeaway for any organization in any industry, really, to make sure that you're not so stuck in what the business has been that you know, aren't willing to, you know, ask yourself some hard questions and do that reflection that allows you to find the path to the future. Kawal, you mentioned in your introduction that this wasn't a typical industry survey. It was a structured Delphi study. Can you talk a little bit about what goes into designing and delivering this particular type of research?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's important to clarify that this wasn't a typical survey or a report. Delphi study is a very different approach. It's not about, you know, sending out a form and counting responses. It is designed to create a structured dialogue. So with the aim that it's going to bring together experts from different corners of the industry to give them the space of exactly what we are saying, to challenge ideas, to reflect on different viewpoints, and to find areas of alignment or tension. And in this case, when we were scoping out the questions and we were trying to understand Domino's requirements, we knew there were big questions in the air. So, you know, we were talking about factory of the future. We were looking at 2030. And we deliberately set out to explore the uncertainty about or around the factory of the future. What are manufacturers prioritizing? What are their real barriers? How are supplier relationships changing? So what we did was we engaged senior leaders, so not just from global FMCG brands, but we also looked at regional manufacturers. We spoke to platform providers, and we made sure we had representation from, you know, across geographies. So looked at Western markets, got perspectives from China and India, because we knew the picture wouldn't be the same everywhere. And when we started off, when we did these interviews, you know, it started off as a deep one-on-one interview, but what makes the Delphi study unique is you don't stop there. You then take those insights, you know, from the conversations, and you synthesize them, analyze them, and play them back to the group of the experts that you've been talking to. So the experts can now react, they can agree, they can disagree. And that helps us refine the insights that were emerging. So it's an iterative process. So when I say Delphi, the iterative process is really at the heart of it. So in many ways, some people might say it's slow research, but it's rich research, because it takes time, but it's not just a data collection exercise. It's about sense making, and what you get in the end is not just, you know, like a static snapshot, but you get like a more directional view of where the sector could be heading and why, and which is what we wanted to achieve for Domino and with Domino.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose one of the rewarding aspects for me to see was how powerful cross regional or cross sector dialogue can be, because if you look at some of the things like digital transformation and outcome-based models, we talk about them like they're universal concepts, but they play out quite differently in practice, and it's quite diverse. So a manufacturer in the UK, dealing with labor shortages or ESG reporting has a very different context to someone in China who's focused on vertical integration or speed to scale. So it's those kind of things that you achieve with Delphi, and in this case, it allowed us to put those perspectives in conversation. So not to flatten them into a single narrative, but to let people see their own strategies in the light of others. And sometimes, and I've had this conversation with Kate and others at Domino, sometimes this is affirming, participants felt validated. Other times it's a bit of a reflection, shift in thinking. Someone might just say, I hadn't considered that model, but maybe it would work for us too. And, I think that's where the real value lies. It's not just collecting insights, but creating that space for reflection. And that's where innovation happens. So that is how Delphi is much more than just a research method. It's a way of preparing organizations to think differently, to look sideways across sectors, regions, and come up with a more holistic view. In this case, what the transformation with services would look like.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, Kate, based on what you define the needs as, it sounds like a good fit for, understanding a bit more depth of what the customers are thinking and what their reactions might be. So Kate, the findings illustrate the growing interest in outcomes-based contracts. Can you speak about how Domino is approaching that shift from your, engineering-centric, product-based history to performance-based relationships?
Yeah, sure. So some of the things we've needed to do are quite sort of foundational to really have the right tools available to ensure that there is a measurement mechanism for outcomes, that there is a way to maximize the customer experience and deliver in an efficient way. So it's about, digital transformation and improving the customer experience and adding software tools and IoT tools to our range of products and services. There's still some business capabilities that we're still developing. These things are major changes and require some significant investment. So being able to look at the way that we offer different payment approaches through our business systems, has created the need to change some of those business systems, and then that comes with it a whole program of change management and training and implementation. Similarly, the way that you would approach a customer to understand what's really of value to them is quite a different approach to what our typical salespeople might be used to. Having different conversations means, we need to support them in developing a different way of conversing and gathering the relevant information about actually what's the most critical performance factor. So, we can say performance-based or outcome-based, but what does that mean for each customer? They might have a different view of what's important, and how they measure that might be different. So we need to, stay close to what those tend to be across the different industries or different customer types. So it could be that maybe a smaller customer has a different understanding than in a large kind of 24/7 factory environment. So some of it is changing those business systems and processes and creating like cross-functional teams where we're actually sharing perspectives and trying to find ways that are standardized across the many different types of offer that we have today. Then we've got, I guess, a train of activity, which maybe I've been more involved with than some of my other colleagues, where we need to learn lessons from other industries. Working alongside ASG, for instance, over the years has helped us to sort of draw parallels and learn and collaborate from other businesses that are in this transformational journey. And then, understand what the likely levers are for our customers, just by looking at what happens in their world. And we're increasingly seeing examples of opportunities to focus more on outcomes. Like, I read the industry press, and you'll get stories about fines for incorrect products that maybe have been packaged in the wrong packaging or something, and that can have really serious implications. We all know the impact of having product withdrawals and recalls and things. So we have to essentially be thinking all the time about how this evolves into different ways of performing. What does performance mean today, and what might it mean in future, and what might it mean for the different groups of customers that we have?
Yeah. There's so many good points in there. I may come back to some of them when we get through our initial questions, but really good point. And I like that you brought up the benefit of learning from companies in different industries and at different phases of this journey, right? Kawal, you spoke about the fact that there are so many distinctions, from industry to industry, business to business, but there are also these universal lenses that we can look at this through. And even though you aren't going to happen upon an exact blueprint that you can follow for success, you're able to take different bits from those conversations and those examples, and to your point, some of the lessons learned to refine your own journey, which is very valuable. Kate mentioned the importance of technology and how that plays a critical role in the ability to deliver value as it's being redefined in terms of performance-based or outcomes. And that certainly requires a capable, flexible digital landscape. What stood out to you most from this study when you look at it from a technology perspective?
Yeah, so clearly I represent a technology company that's sort of market leading from an automation, physical automation, and a data automation. And I think the data automation piece is the most important part of transformation. Clearly, there'll be far more robotics and things like that that'll be on the shop floor than ever before. But it's the data automation where the big wins are going to be. And that aligns itself perfectly with the report, because it demonstrates the perfect storm. We've got these challenges that are on a daily basis, by the looks of it, with some of the tariff discussions that are going on across the globe currently. But those sort of things have big impact in businesses, and you have to be agile and have the vision to develop the systems that are going to counter that from an agility point. But as well as all those challenges that are continually trying to change direction, it's the challenges around sustainability, it's the challenges around skills. How do you be more productive? How do you reduce waste? All these things are coming at companies all at the same time. And the only way out really is you either embrace technology or you're forced to take technology on. And I think embracing it is the thing that will make the difference with companies that actually are planning and working around that. And to Kate's point about the as a service type model, I think a lot of companies are going to start to change. Now, that's culturally, for a lot of businesses, is a different discussion with suppliers. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it's the culture bit that stops it really working. So But in terms of if you analyze a skill shortage with an immediate requirement to do something, and you haven't got the skills, but you need the solution, then the as a service model is the thing that is going to actually accelerate the deployment as I see it. And I think the report pulls all that nicely together. So I think it's a very concise report, and it's something that is well worth a look at.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I've always said that, you know, technology is a tool, it's an enabler, right? It can't do this journey or other journeys for anyone. But certainly when we talk about the ability to deliver outcomes and, you know, what the future looks like, it is more than just an enabler. I mean, it is an absolute necessity. You know, Kate, you spoke about the importance of agility and being able to offer that to your customers. And there's simply no way to do that without a modern digital approach. So I think you're absolutely right, Keith, that it's imperative whether companies want to take the initiative to get ahead of it, or whether they wait until it's being forced, their hands being forced. And so I certainly agree that the more we can embrace that and figure out how to leverage it and where it plays a role. And Kate, you mentioned managing the change, you know, getting ahead of those things is certainly going to help propel companies forward in this journey. Kate, coming back to you, when you think about in the report, there's the key performance criteria for the factory of 2030. And so it's this, you know, new set of KPIs as we look to the future. When you think about what it will take for Domino to be where it needs to be in 5 years' time, what do you think the biggest hurdle to overcome is going to be?
I think, well, you've touched on it just there, Sarah. I think it's really about how you can put a value on the less tangible aspects of a relationship with a supplier, like the flexibility to adapt with what might be unpredictable changes. And so it's really a challenge for, you know, for both parties, for all parties in the value chain. The typical investment decision is no longer just about capital cost. It needs to include, you know, the time and effort to operate and maintain, the ease of doing business, the reliability, you know, even coming down to things like space requirements. It's something that cropped up in some conversations I had with some of our customers in areas of India where, in fact, they were struggling to grow at the speed that they wanted to, just simply because of space in the area. It's a market need that perhaps wouldn't be quite so obvious in other regions, but there are you know, energy, again, Keith mentioned the sort of energy and sustainability drivers that are going to crop up, and how are our customers' procurement teams equipped to understand and translate that into the buying criteria that they need to inform decisions. So you know, there are certain aspects that Domino can help customers to understand return on investment. We can help them to look at how downtime or waste, inefficiency, error, those sorts of things can impact on their own costs, and you know, demonstrate the sort of value of certain aspects of equipment performance. But it's far less straightforward when you're talking about supplier performance and the various sort of less tangible aspects of that. And so yeah, how we really put a value on adaptability and flexibility, I think is probably one of the biggest challenges that we face.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think too, you mentioned earlier, part of this is enablement of helping the teams, especially the sales teams, understand, how do you identify what it is that from a performance perspective is most important to each customer, each client. So maybe that one thing or a couple of things is something that is so important to them that it's relatively easy to define. But to your point, there are all of these other things that are going to come into this new offering that are sometimes very hard to pin down. So there's the realities of that from a commercial perspective, but also, and you alluded to this earlier, those realities become very apparent in the sales conversations as well. How do you appropriately articulate those more intangible aspects of value in a way that you make sure they resonate with the customer and that it, justifies however you end up deciding to monetize it, right? So there's a lot of layers to that change. And then, also where are your different customers at in their feelings about this journey? Some are going to be further along and they're going to be more receptive to those conversations. Others are going to be more traditional in their views or desires, and it's going to be harder work to sort of bring them along. So there's a number of layers that come into play when we think about that particular challenge, for sure. Keith, you mentioned earlier the absolute importance of sustainability. And we know that, and the study suggests that sustainability is, no longer something organizations are looking at just because it's a compliance requirement, but rather it is a performance driver. It is a key area of focus. How do you see this sentiment reflected in your day-to-day interactions?
It's still absolutely a big topic with many companies. I think it's a word that means different things to different people. I think it's certainly in the food industry, sustainability covers the complete supply chain outside of the factory. So ethical sourcing and things like that come into that. So it's trying to pinpoint which bit really impacts, certainly from our perspective, what we can do to do something with. But certainly some of the big ticket items of going from gas to electric, so for example, is a serious, difficult challenge. So a big sugar refinery or a biscuit manufacturer with 80-meter long ovens going from gas to electric is going to be a challenge financially. But the other areas where we can support probably quick wins is where you start to become more efficient in your plant and your process optimization side of things, reducing waste and the energy to produce that waste as well. So there's very much around energy reduction still. I mean, we've been talking about energy reduction for many years, but as the cost of energy increased, it clearly became a bigger item. So around that process optimization is something that can be achieved again with technology as you start to understand your processes more. For the food industry specifically tends to work on an overproduction method just to make sure there's things on the shelves, but because of that you end up with waste, and waste costs money. So it's how you can bring a lot of these systems together to try and understand, so what impact would we have if we managed to do X as opposed to Y? And that's where technology will start to give better answers to questions. And ultimately, it's the ROI. So sustainability, I think every company wants to be there. Some are probably a bit more honest about it than others. But ultimately, if you can be sustainable and you can save better cost, then they're the quick wins. And a lot of companies are going down that route because it just makes sense from an ROI perspective. And I think from a technology company as well, we have to be better at demonstrating what that ROI is, because that's the thing that's going to really accelerate, again, the importance around sustainability.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you just said is really interesting, though, when you consider Kate's mention of the need to figure out ways to become more adaptable for customers. And, this idea of being able to use AI technology to say, okay, here's a scenario that we're facing. If we do this, then what? If we do this, then what? Right? It allows you to really really narrow down the best path of action instead of, to your point, well, let's overproduce because we don't want to be in a situation where we don't have enough, or let's, act out of a fear of scarcity and overdo it, or, let's run too lean and then risk not having the capacity we need to meet demand. It really allows you to refine your approach and to make very, very strategic but specific decisions on factors in, pretty much a real-time basis, which is an incredibly powerful capability for companies that are trying to become more adaptable, to be more flexible, and to, focus on this idea of performance and what that looks like to a number of different customers, not just in one uniform flavor, if you will.
Yeah, we had a conversation recently with a senior exec in a FMCG company, and we said, well, what does digitalization mean to them? And it was absolutely that. It de-risked decision making and investment.
Mm-hmm.
As simple as that. That was for them. That's what it was. It was data that gave them the confidence to invest.
Right. Knowledge is power. Absolutely. And, it's this is what I was saying earlier about the technology piece. It's just I was interviewing someone, I mean, this was probably 5 years or so ago, about their transition to outcomes. And, he made the point of, we had to figure out in what ways we needed to rely on technology, because it would have never been possible to transform our business by scaling on manpower alone. We couldn't offer a different type of experience to our customers if we just tried to, work harder at what we were already doing. We needed to really harness the power of technology. And I think 5 years later, that sounds like, yeah, no kidding, right? Because of where we are with the digital landscape and with AI. But, there's still a lot of organizations that are trying to figure out where exactly does that fit and how exactly can it help. And that, to your point, Keith, is the work of their providers to make it very easy for companies to understand how to harness that power. So good. Kawal, I'm curious to ask you how the findings of this particular study compare with the broader research that the Advanced Services Group does on servitization. What kind of commonalities or differences did you pick up on?
That is such a valuable question, because one of the unique things we get to do at ASG is we connect patterns across different, sectors. So we work with organizations in aerospace and healthcare, of course, manufacturing and other sectors, and we see some consistent trends emerge. And the big one is that organizations everywhere are moving away from just supplying physical products. And now the focus is on what can we do to deliver performance? What is it around reliability and results that we need to be looking at? Because the conversation in the industry is moving in that direction. So, in other words, the shift to advanced services or servitization, I think, has now progressed far ahead than it not just being a theory, it is happening, it is gathering pace. So, to answer your question, what really stood out to me in the FMCG study is how clearly that the idea of that sort of transformation is now reaching the FMCG sector. In the past, FMCG might have been seen as quite conservative or price sensitive. Those are the impressions that we have of the sector. But what we're seeing and hearing directly from the manufacturers is that the pressure to deliver faster, and Kate and Keith mentioned, cleaner, more traceable products, more flexible production, that is making outcome-based partnerships more attractive in this space. And just to give you an example, there was, so I was speaking with one of the respondents, manufacturer, who started working with a turnkey supplier. And you know, this was simply to simplify procurement, but their impression over time and everything that evolved and changed, the way it changed, what they began to value wasn't simply the simplicity. It was the integration, the data insights, the ability to predict issues before they occurred. You know, the things that we talk about with predictive maintenance and things like that. Even the idea of paying based on results, not assumptions. You know, that is a massive mindset change, and it echoes with what we've been hearing with all of the other work that we've been doing with other businesses, you know, whether it's aerospace, for example. So jet engine manufacturers are compensated based on hours. So, you know, so there's focus where there's on system uptime. That is defining supplier payments. And to be clear, the transition is not seamless. It's one of the biggest challenges we see both in this Delphi study that we conducted for Domino and in our wider research. It is that many of the firms are conceptually ready for these models, but structurally they're not quite there yet. They need to figure out how to manage risk sharing, how to protect intellectual property, which is a recurrent theme, keeps coming on over and over again. How do they manage fair and transparent pricing when, you know, the outcomes vary? So that is what we often refer to as the readiness gap. The willingness is there, the appetite is growing, but the frameworks still need to catch up. So for me, the real value in comparing the you know, FMCG Delphi study to the broader piece of work that we do is it shows that FMCG is not behind the curve. In fact, it's leaning into that transformation in a very grounded, in a very operationally focused way. But there is this challenge, and the challenge now is building that commercial collaborative infrastructure that will allow these models to thrive at scale. And that's where ASG continues to support our partners, you know, helping them not only understand what servitization means, but also help them build the systems, the skills, the capabilities, and the confidence to really act on it.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work, Kate. So I heard you say all of the different things, you know, and I think it's a really good point, Kawal. I'm not trying to in any way compare a little bit of a survey that Future of Field Service did to anything ASG has done by any means, because you would just academically shoot me down, rightfully so. But last year we we launched what we called the Standout 50 Leadership Awards. And so the idea was to recognize service leaders, because service is a huge area of opportunity for so many businesses. Service often still doesn't have a seat at the table, et cetera. And when we went through that process, they were peer nominated. And once we had the 50 people selected, I did create a survey looking at just different things that I thought would be interesting to get an idea of where those 50 leaders who were nominated based on standing out in their impact, where their organizations are at. And we looked at a number of different questions across sort of people, process, and technology. But one of the things that really stood out to me is when we asked about customer expectations, number 2 was that customers are desiring peace of mind or guaranteed outcomes, but only 26% of the respondents are currently offering any form of outcomes-based service. And so that just shows that, like you said, the readiness gap, you know, the customers, us as humans, consumers are increasingly getting used to, you know, guaranteed performance and having assuredness in what we're paying for, having visibility into the value that we're receiving, whatever that may be. But there's a lot of work that goes into shifting a business to change how it operates. And, you know, that's a journey that, you know, there's still a lot of work to do. So it's great to hear stories, Kate, like yours, and there's seemingly a lot of organizations out there, Kawal, for ASG to continue to support. So that's good. One final question for each of you. I'm going to ask the same question for all three of you, and then we'll take a look at audience questions as well. And the final question is, if you had to choose one insight from this study that industry stakeholders cannot afford to ignore, what would it be and why? So Keith, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay.
$1 million question, I guess, isn't it? To me, I think it is around the servitization model. To me, I think that is the thing that is going to accelerate transformation. Technology will just go at a pace, and the challenges won't go away. The challenges will still be there. So how can you make this all fit? And I think the as a service, or, you know, outcome based, as technology starts to give us more answers to the challenges, it won't just be one machine. It'll be a complete production line type of scenario, where the data is giving everybody the confidence to do based on a throughput or a quick changeover or whatever the matrix needs to be. But the technology will be the thing that will actually drive that. And I think so that servitization piece is the bit that I think the takeaway will be from the report.
Kate, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I was really focused in on the differences, the ways that, you know, regionally or by business type, you know, you see maybe the same challenge, but it's like Kawal alluded to, it's in a different context. And so the takeaway for us certainly is, you know, how do we address the same challenge in a different way to suit? So, you know, when we're talking about skills shortage, is it best to implement some form of automation that reduces operator involvement? Or is it best to actually provide training tools and simplify user interfaces and, you know, make things more straightforward, but not minimize that operator interaction, because that's not what the customer is actually asking for. So you've got to be careful in how you interpret the challenge, and not sort of assume what the solution is. There's likely to be different ways of overcoming the challenge according to really what else is playing a part in that.
Yeah. And Kawal, last but not least, what is your biggest takeaway for people to keep in mind?
This is a tough one, but because this is and I was head down, you know, deep into the FMCG customer insights. I have to speak from there. I have to take their stand, you know, where it's that the FMCG customers are no longer satisfied with transactional relationships. They're looking for suppliers who can deliver outcomes and share responsibility for performance. And when I say outcomes, you know, I mean uptime, efficiency, sustainability, everything that we've been talking about, cost predictability. So real measurable results that tie directly to their strategic goals, to the manufacturer's strategic goals. And what's interesting is how direct manufacturers are or were during the study about it. They're not asking for perfect systems. What they're asking for is alignment. Partners who are willing to stay with them across the life cycle of a solution, not just during the installation period or the warranty period. So it's you know, one manufacturer shared how they've started moving towards outcome-based contracts, not because someone sold them on it, but because they were tired of shouldering all of the operational risks alone. So they wanted to know that their suppliers had skin in the game. So, you know, that's a really powerful idea. It reflects a big shift that we are seeing. Of course, this relationship changes, how are you going to structure your commercial models? It's going to bring in things like variable pricing, service level agreements, sometimes even joint KPIs. And there are going to be challenges around, I heard a lot around people talking about, trust issues, data access and accountability, what's going to happen to all of that. But still, manufacturers are clearly signaling that they're ready to have those conversations. And I think for suppliers like Domino, for platform providers, from where Keith is coming, the big takeaway is that the rules of engagement are changing. It's more than just technical specs or price competitiveness. It's about whether you can help your customer succeeds and whether you're willing to stand behind their success. So I think that's the biggest takeaway for me.
Very good. Okay. All right. So let's shift gears and take some audience questions. So as a reminder, if anyone else has a question, please go ahead and use the Q&A tool to type that in. So the first one is Kawal, directed to you. And it says, with FMCG leaning into the curve, does the report give insight into how price points at retail level are adjusting for the value add being offered by as-a-service providers?
No, I mean, I'm not entirely sure how to tackle this question because, that, like I was saying, there is clear, there is, so obviously when we were interviewing people for the study and, executives at different levels, we did get a lot of responses where they were coming from more, they were observing these things happening around them, but not necessarily, especially with the cohort that we were concerned with, or the customers of Domino that we were speaking to weren't themselves involved in the development and delivery of these contracts as yet. So I do not have a specific insight around the price points at the retail level from this study. But of course, there are insights outside of this study that would that would be, in a way, that could respond to this question. But in the FMCG sector, I don't think I'm in the best space to answer this question, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Kate, question for you. It says, from an environmental perspective, extended producer responsibility is a trend that is emerging. How do you guys balance the extended risk and reward balance without making your offering more expensive? Because if a linear adjustment is the answer, will it not over time exclude smaller customers from as-a-service offers as producers de-risk themselves?
Okay, that's an interesting one. So from what I know of this area, the extended producer responsibility is this sort of end of life disposal, and as Domino has actually been operating with some aspect of this within our offers for some time. We've provided leases to customers that mean that we retain ownership of the equipment, and therefore we're responsible for taking it back when it's no longer reliable and needs replacing, and disposing of it. So it's something we've already built into our approach for those lease agreements, and that's something that seems to work across the board with smaller and larger customers. There is typically a small premium for a lease agreement, as there would be elsewhere in other industries. That typically, if you're spreading the cost and you're improving your flexibility and reducing the risk for the manufacturer in not owning that equipment, then there would be a premium attached. But it doesn't seem to have any impact on reducing the attractiveness for a smaller customer. And actually, with smaller customers, it may well be more attractive to use that kind of agreement, where maybe capital is just not as available to them at the time when they need to scale up.
Okay. All right, we'll take one more audience question before we wrap up, and I'll let anyone answer this that would like to. It says, how should companies rethink their product development when customers don't own the machines, but just want guaranteed outcomes? Kate, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I think we need to be thinking about the serviceability of equipment and the full sort of product life cycle. So, you know, it really does come down to service and reliability being built into the machines from the start, so that you create a model that is attractive and reliable to build the services on top of. And there's many examples of how Domino is starting to adopt these sorts of service by design approaches within our product development, and yeah, hopefully these sorts of things, plus looking at the full product cost and all those kind of factors that we talked about earlier about how to sort of minimize operator intervention and things. Those are the sorts of things that you need to be thinking of when you design your new products.
Cal, anything you would want to add?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it? And it's a pivotal question. So, what would you do? Like, you design for performance, not ownership. You would think more about, modularity, and anything to do with upgradability will become essential. You would want to look at how to close the loop between usage and design. Cross-functional collaboration is going to become critical, because it's not going to be just product development. Total life cycle economics. So basically, product development and outcome-based models, it's not about making machines or products that customer want to buy, but it's about building systems that deliver guaranteed results day in, day out, with minimum friction, but maximum trust. So yeah, that's how I would respond to that.
Okay, wonderful. All right, well, I know we are almost out of time, and there are some slides that you're seeing up. I just want to say thank you all for spending some time together today and talking about this, and thanks for having me to take part. Also want to remind everyone that, as I mentioned earlier, anyone who attended the webinar will be sent the white paper as soon as it is completed, so keep an eye out for that. And Cal, is there anything else you would like to say to close?
No, just thank you all for joining us today, and thank you for the questions. Huge thank you to our panelists. So Kate, thank you. Keith, thank you for coming in today. And of course you, Sarah, for all three of you for sharing your insights, your experiences, your perspectives so openly. I think it's been rich. It's been thought-provoking, and yeah, your contributions really brought whatever we've uncovered in the white paper, those findings to life. So thank you very much.
Everyone have a good day.
Take care. Goodbye.
Thanks, folks. Bye.
Bye.